You remember the exact moment it happened. Not because of what he said, but because of how he looked when he turned to leave. There was no sadness in his eyes, no regret. There was just a small, self-satisfied smirk on his face, the look of a man who had just won a game he was playing by himself. He was convinced his betrayal would cost him nothing. To him, you were a chapter he had finished reading, a door he had closed and locked behind him. For you, it was the beginning of a deep, festering wound that settled into your soul. The pain was a physical thing, a weight in your chest that made it hard to breathe. And with the pain came the burning injustice of it all. You watched him move on, completely free, while you were left standing in the ruins of the life you had built, forced to pick up the pieces alone. He truly believed he had gotten away with it. He believed happiness was his by right, no matter who he had to crush to get it. But the universe keeps its own ledger. There is no debt that goes unpaid, and the law of cause and effect is absolute. The rot he so carefully planted in your soul, believing it would never touch him, is now blooming on his own skin. It started as something you heard through others, a small, persistent ailment, but now it's undeniable. Dark, almost necrotic patches have begun to spread across his body, a physical map of his moral decay. No doctor can find a cause or offer a cure. The man who once strutted with such insolent pride now hides himself away, shrouded in long sleeves and high collars even in the suffocating heat of summer. His once vibrant face is gaunt, his skin sallow. The arrogant smirk is gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed panic. Those who catch a glimpse of him speak of a physical decay that seems to radiate from within. It's the stench of a man whose inner filth is finally breaking through to the surface. And so, desperate, knowing somewhere in the gut of his corrupted soul that this sickness is the physical price of his actions, he has come back to you. He stands before you, a ghost of the man who walked away, driven not by remorse or love, but by raw animal terror. He begs for your help, for your forgiveness, clinging to the pathetic, absurd belief that your absolution can somehow stop the rot that consumes him from the inside out. But you look at him, truly look at him, and you feel nothing but a profound, settled calm. You are healed. The wound he left has long since scarred over, leaving you stronger than before. And in that moment, you understand the fundamental truth. This is no longer your problem. You calmly, quietly turn him away. His debt isn't to you anymore. It's to the universe, and it's a bill he has to pay all by himself. Look, let's talk about what happened, about the decision he made. He stood at a crossroads and chose a path he thought was a shortcut to happiness. In his mind, the trade was simple. He would exchange you, your shared history, and his own integrity for a feeling of freedom and victory. He convinced himself that your pain was a necessary, acceptable cost for his own advancement. He didn't just leave. He made a conscious choice to believe he was above consequences. He looked at the life you built together and decided it was disposable, something he could simply walk away from without a scratch. That was his fundamental error. He believed he could inflict a deep wound on another person's soul and keep his own perfectly clean. He thought he could plant poison in your garden and never have the wind blow the seeds back into his own. That arrogance, that belief that he could cheat the universal law of cause and effect, was the single greatest mistake of his life. He didn't just betray you, he betrayed the very nature of reality, and now reality is collecting its debt. And so, the bill came due. The universe doesn't operate on our timelines, and it doesn't accept excuses. It simply keeps a perfect, silent ledger. The debt he thought he had erased by simply walking away began to collect interest. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was just whispers, fragments of conversations you'd overhear. People said he wasn't looking well, that he seemed tired, stressed. You paid it no mind. His life was no longer your concern. But the whispers grew more specific, more unsettled. They spoke of a strange sickness, a persistent ailment that clung to him. Then you saw him. It was from a distance, across a street, but it was enough. The man who had walked with his chest puffed out, who had occupied space with an unearned sense of ownership, was now trying to become invisible. He was wrapped in a heavy jacket on a warm day, his collar turned up high, his head down. There was a frantic, hunted look in the brief glimpse you caught of his eyes. The easy confidence was gone, replaced by the brittle fear of someone trying to hide a terrible secret. The truth, as it always does, eventually came out. The secret he was hiding was on his own skin.
People who saw him up close spoke of dark, discolored patches that seemed to be spreading across his body. They described it as if the skin itself were dying, turning gray and lifeless. It was a decay that no doctor could diagnose and no medicine could touch. It was the physical manifestation of a spiritual sickness. The poison he had so carefully cultivated for you had found its way back to its source. His body was telling the story his arrogance refused to acknowledge.
The ugliness he had carried inside, the moral rot that allowed him to destroy a life without a second thought, could no longer be contained. It was pushing its way to the surface, marking him for all to see. The arrogant smirk was now a memory, replaced by the hollowed-out face of a man consumed by a panic so deep it had settled in his bones. He was living in a prison of his own making, and the walls were his own flesh. And so, the day came when he stood before you again, not on a sunlit street or in a crowded room, but on your doorstep, a shadow seeking refuge as night fell. He was a hollowed-out version of the man you once knew, a ghost haunting the scene of his own crime. The confident posture was gone, replaced by a desperate slump. The vibrant life that had once colored his skin had been leached away, leaving behind a sallow, almost gray canvas for the creeping darkness that marred it. The arrogance was gone from his eyes. In its place was a raw, animal terror, the look of a cornered thing that knows the hunter is closing in. He didn't come with an apology, not a real one. The words tumbled out of him, a frantic, disjointed plea, woven from fear, not remorse. He spoke of doctors who shrugged, of tests that came back empty, of a creeping rot that medicine couldn't name or touch. He showed you a sliver of his arm, pulling back a cuff to reveal the dead, discolored flesh beneath. And the sight of it didn't stir your anger or your pity. It was simply a fact, like a rotting tree in a forest. He was begging for your help, for your forgiveness, as if your words were a magic spell that could reverse the decay. He was clinging to the pathetic, absurd belief that the soul he had tried to poison held the only antidote for the poison now consuming him. He didn't want to make things right with you. He wanted you to make things right for him. You looked at him, truly looked at him, and you waited. You waited for the familiar sting of anger, the ghost of that old, deep pain to rise in your chest. You waited for the satisfaction, the triumphant feeling of seeing justice served in such a visceral, undeniable way. But there was nothing. The space inside you where that wound used to be was now calm, still and solid. It was scarred tissue, stronger than the original flesh had ever been. In that silence, you saw him not as the architect of your pain, but simply as a man paying a bill he had long forgotten he'd incurred. The universe, in its perfect and impartial cruelty, had simply sent him the invoice. His body was just the paper it was printed on. You understood in that moment the fundamental truth. His sickness was not your cure to give. His decay was a conversation between him and his own soul. You were not a participant in that conversation anymore. You were not a victim in his story. You were just a witness to its final, inevitable chapter. And so, you calmly and quietly shook your head. You didn't offer him false comfort or bitter words. You offered him nothing, because nothing was what you owed. His debt was never truly to you. You were just the person he chose to write the check against. His real debt was to the balance of things, to the universal law he believed he was clever enough to cheat. You closed the door, not with anger, but with a quiet finality. You left him standing there in the encroaching darkness, alone with his ledger, to face the collector who never, ever forgets. And you turned back to the warmth and light of your own home, completely and utterly free. Let's talk about the man he is today, now that the bill has come due. The signs of his fall are not loud or dramatic. They are a quiet, creeping decay, a slow erasure of the person he pretended to be. His face is the first thing you would notice. It's not just tired, it's a landscape of defeat. The arrogance that once held his features in a confident mask has crumbled, and what's left has collapsed inward. His skin has a waxy, sallow quality, the color of old paper, and it's stretched tight across the bones as if it's shrinking. But the true story is in his eyes. The defiant spark is gone.
replaced by a dull, haunting vacancy. It's the look of a man who is perpetually watching something horrifying unfold in his own peripheral vision, something he can never turn away from because the horror is coming from inside. This inner decay dictates his every move. He no longer walks, he skitters. He hugs the walls of corridors and keeps his head down on the street, his shoulders hunched as if to make himself a smaller target. There's a constant nervous energy about him, a fidgeting of hands, a darting of the eyes, the behavior of someone terrified of being truly seen. He avoids lingering conversations and physical contact, flinching away from a hand on his arm as if it were a hot brand. He lives like a fugitive, hiding not from the law, but from the reflection in a shop window, from the unfiltered light of day, from any reminder of the body that has become his prison. And his environment reflects this perfectly. The new life he fought so hard to build is a monument to sterility. He lives in a place that is less a home and more a quarantine zone. The rooms are cold, sparsely furnished, and impeccably clean, but it's the oppressive cleanliness of a hospital, designed to keep contamination at bay. There is no warmth, no clutter of a life being lived, no photos on the walls, no stack of books by a chair.
It's a silent, empty space that mirrors the void within him. He has built himself a pristine, lifeless tomb, and he is its only occupant, waiting in the cold for the rot to finally claim him completely. You will not hear of his end from a dramatic phone call in the middle of the night. There will be no final, cinematic confrontation. His story, from your perspective, is already over. The final chapter will unfold in silence, far from your life, and when the news finally reaches you, it will be as a distant echo, a third-hand story about a man you used to know. It will land with the emotional weight of reading a stranger's obituary. His future is a straight, unwavering line into solitude. The hope that drove him to your door will curdle into a bitter, resigned despair. He will stop seeking cures, understanding on a primal level that his ailment is not of the body but of the soul. He will retreat completely, a hermit in a self-imposed leper colony. The pristine, sterile home he built will become his tomb, and he will be its sole, decaying occupant. The rot on his skin will continue its patient, relentless march, a slow-motion collapse that mirrors the one happening within. His end will be a quiet one. He will simply fade, consumed by the very emptiness he championed, a man erased by his own moral bankruptcy. And your future? It is the complete opposite of his. It is not an ending, but a beginning that has already begun. The profound peace you felt when you closed that door was not a fleeting moment of victory. It was the settling of a foundation. Your life will be built on that solid ground. You will learn to trust the quiet strength in your own hands, the clarity in your own heart. You will discover that the space he once took up in your soul was not a void, but fertile ground waiting for something real to be planted. Joy will return, not with a loud bang, but as a quiet, steady warmth, like sunlight filtering into a room. You will laugh without a shadow of the past catching in your throat. You will build new connections, not from a place of desperate need, but from a foundation of mutual respect and shared honesty. You will look in the mirror and see not the survivor of a devastating betrayal, but simply yourself, whole, scarred, and infinitely stronger for it. Those scars are not reminders of the wound. They are the proof of your capacity to heal. His memory will cease to be a source of pain. It will become a quiet, factual reminder of a lesson learned and a price that was paid by him. His fate is not your victory. Your life is. And then, the moment will come. It won't be a dramatic face-to-face confrontation under a stormy sky. It will be a quiet vibration on your nightstand, a message from a number you barely recognize, but a cold knot in your stomach confirms who it is. The words on the screen will not be an apology. They will be a desperate, manipulative hook.
I'm not well. I think it's because of us. I need to see you.